Could you imagine getting a job in one of the most iconic bars in the world off of an advert on Gumtree, the global classified ads website? Our guest did, and it kickstarted a career in the industry that would take her all over the world, including New York. I'm Susan Schwartz, your drinking companion, and this is Lush Life Podcast. Every week, we are inspired to live life one cocktail at a time by everyone in this industry. Rebekkah Dooley took that first job and never looked back, creating award-winning cocktail menus for London bar Callooh Callay, moving to New York to work at the Dead Rabbit, and now back to London. As well as working with the Umbrella Project, she has launched Discard the Zine, a new drinks industry magazine. She's here today to tell us how that first experience at Milk and Honey set the bar very high. Before we begin, you can find links on how to donate to some of your favorite bars or have cocktails delivered right to your door during this rough time on the homepage of my website, lushlifemanual.com. Now on to Rebekkah. I heard you speak at Imbibe Live.
Cool.
When I first started my podcast, and you were talking about menus.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if you said it or the other person who was speaking about always having an Aperol Spritz on the menu because I think it's someone who owns a bar because people will just buy it no matter what. But from that moment, I was like, I want her on my show. I want her on my show, but I hardly even had a show yet. And I just launched it in June and it was July. And I'm like, I know I'm going to come back to her sooner or later. And here we are.
That must have been like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. How long ago was that?
Well, I launched Lush Life in 2016.
Okay.
So it must have been like, and that was, I think, June 7th. So it was probably just 3 weeks later.
Yeah, 2016. So nearly 4 years ago. Wow, cool.
I know, isn't that crazy? Look, and you've been around the world and back, and now you're here.
Yeah.
So, well, I would love to know a little bit more about you.
Okay.
What I didn't glean in that. So why don't we start kind of where I always start? I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about where you grew up and how you found your way into this crazy business.
Sure. I'm from London originally, North London or Camden. Camden has a big bar, live music, lots of venues and clubs and pubs in that area. One of my first jobs was flyering in Camden, so handing out flyers for the music events that they had there. So I kind of always grew up in that. Like, if you've been to Camden Town,
yes, of course.
Yeah, so like even just walking down the street, like it's almost like a party vibe. I mean, it's not that great during the day when everyone's drunk and day drunk and hungover, but growing up in Camden was like a cool, quite unique experience. It's definitely not really it's not really how it used to be, which is such like an old thing to say. No,
you still get that vibe. Definitely. Camden is, if you're going to pick any place, even, I guess Camden and Chelsea always feel like there's a party going on.
Yes, like quite similar, but two very different places. But now there's a lot of shops there and a lot of chain shops, but it used to all be market stalls, and they were all like independent retailers. Yeah. And there weren't any like big super clubs. It was all like proper old school London pubs and old school live music venues. And then I started working in a pub as a glass collector when I was like 16, and then started bartending. Quickly gave that up. And
what was it that you didn't like about bartending?
The people.
The people you were working with, or the people you were serving?
The people I was serving. I love the people that I was working with at the time. It was the Macbeth actually on Hoxton Street, which is still there, and the people who were my bosses then, Melanie and Mark, so independently owned by a couple. They're still the bosses now. And they were great. They were fantastic. I think I like working now. I work in marketing and PR and events and that side of things. I don't like being in constant interaction with people every day. And I think to be a bartender or to work at a bar, like whether you're a server or a door person, you need to like be able to switch it on
Oh yeah, I used to.
I'm a bit antisocial by nature, so it doesn't come easily to me.
So look, well, you found yourself back in bars, so
Yeah,
obviously something was drawing you back in.
yeah.
Um, what were you studying, or what were you thinking that you might want to do when you grew up,
Well,
or
it's
had no idea?
yeah, I don't think I really had any idea. I didn't go to college or to university, so I wasn't studying at that time. I don't know. I had at one point I decided I was going to be a vet and I was going to go back to school, and because I love animals, but obviously that didn't happen. I was interested in interior design, but I didn't. I had no plan. I didn't know what I was doing, just hoping that it worked out, and it kind of did. But
Well, obviously
a
we're here,
while,
so
yeah,
definitely something worked out.
yeah,
Maybe not vet school, but
yeah.
something worked out. So I know that you started in milk and honey, but what there's the story, the urban myth that you saw an ad in something
Yeah.
that attracted you. So what was it about that ad, and where did you see it?
It was an advert on Gumtree, which I don't know that no one really uses Gumtree anymore, but yeah, it was a job advert, and I'd never heard of milk and honey. I didn't know what it was. This was 2010, I think, 2009. So it had won World's Best Bar a couple of times, but that to me didn't mean anything. It paid okay.
Did they say that in the ad? Like, what was the ad? Do you remember it?
I don't know. I don't think they did say that. I now know the person that wrote it, Jonathan Cowley, who was the general manager for a long time. I think that he didn't want someone who was into all of that kind of. Are you allowed to swear on this? But so I think now looking back on it, he specifically didn't want someone who was like heavily into the bar industry. He wanted someone who was going to come and do their job and be nice to guests and go home, which is what I did. And the bartenders would do trainings and exams and menu trainings and tastings, spirit tastings, and I never understood what was going on. I thought they were so weird because I'd only worked in pubs, and the idea that they would do sit down written exams, I was like, these people are weird. And
no, wait a sec, to back up for a second. Do you remember your interview for that job?
Yeah, I remember the interview with John. Yeah, I mean, I was 21 at the time also, which I think helped. So I had this kind of cheerful optimism, and I was bright-eyed and quite innocent, I guess. But he knew that I was completely clueless. Yeah, I think he liked it. I think that was an asset.
So then you saw what these bartenders were doing. You're like, oh, screw that. See, I can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it wasn't so much that I was like, oh, I don't like that. It didn't make any sense to me. I'd only drank in pubs. So the idea that bartenders were trained professionals who were doing this as a career was a new idea to me. I didn't understand it. And I think one thing as well was that they all hung out with each other. Now I know how the bar industry is, and everyone hangs out with each other it's a community or a family, you could say. But at the time, I thought that was really strange that they worked together and then they finished work and they hung out. When I finished work, I wanted to go and see my friends or go home. I did not want to hang out with the people that I just spent 8 hours with. So I didn't understand it at the time. It was only afterwards when I looked back that I was like, God, that was a really good bar. When I went on and worked in other places that weren't as good, but they paid more money, so I thought it was a good career move. And then got there and was like, this bar sucks. Why aren't they seating people properly? Or, there are too many people crowded at that table, or that table's been waiting too long for a drink. So John had kind of instilled these pillars of hospitality and cocktail bartending in me without me even realizing. Mm-hmm. So I think having Milk and Honey as my first cocktail bar experience, working on the door, in a way, it set the bar very high. And it taught me things where I didn't realize that I was learning, but it taught me a lot.
And also, I guess it made you want to stay in that industry as well.
Yeah.
Because you just said you went on to work in other bars. It wasn't as if you said, forget it, I'm doing something else.
Yeah. I guess I realized that I could, I didn't have any qualifications, and I think I realized that I could be good at it. Yeah, I think I enjoyed it. The money was good for someone. Looking back, it wasn't great, but for someone who was 21, and it was fun getting the bus into Soho every day and meeting new people. There was always every night was an experience. And I did enjoy it, but I think there's also a part that I didn't really have any other options. I mean, I had worked in retail. I guess I worked in retail and I hated it and knew that I was never going to go back to that, even though I did it for a couple of years and worked in a few different shops. So I guess I must have liked it. Yeah. I certainly didn't think at the time, like, this is what I want to do with my life. I was also only working as, my limited experience was kind of handing out flyers, collecting glasses, hanging coats, selling tickets, and working on the door, which, I mean, gave me a little bit of insight, but weren't things that at that point I wanted to make a career out of. So yeah, I had to grow and adapt and find my place, I guess, in the industry.
So you said that you then went to work in several bars that didn't have the same way of working as Milk and Honey. When did you find the next bar that you felt did have that, and you thought, oh yeah, this is the right way? Yeah.
So the next bar was Callooh Callay. I think I started working there in 2011 or 2012. Which, I mean, it's like an East London Shoreditch party bar, and at the time, I mean, it's still, don't get me, it's still a great bar. I don't want to, it's still a fantastic bar, but at the time there's like Sean Ware working there, Andrea Montague, Victor Nordloff, Simon Tui, like there were so many fantastic people working there. And I joined their team as a reservationist. And I remember, my interview for that very well as well. But so I was doing like office work during the daytime, taking bookings, answering emails.
Did you realize who those people were then? You know, when you went to Milk and Honey, you didn't really know Milk and Honey. Did you know what you were getting into this time?
I did. Yeah, I did my research. So I looked at their website. Like I came prepared to my interview. Like I'd worked out who everyone was and what they did there. So yeah, I studied well. I think that's why I got the job, because I was prepared and I kind of showed them that I knew everything.
What was it like working in a place that was so hot at that time?
It was great. It was a really fun time, and working with so many talented people was really important. Like Andrea Montague, who was my bar manager, she now works for Bacardi as ambassador for Scotch whiskey. And that was, 10 years ago, but we're still close friends now and we still do work together. Like I did a seminar at the Dewar's Distillery a few months ago. And Sean Ware, who was the general manager, who now works for Bacardi. And I was just doing some writing for Bacardi last week. So those relationships that I built then are still, I mean, they're friendships now, but we still do work together. So I think the best thing about working at Callooh Callay at that time was definitely the people that I met and the things that I learned from them. Like, especially seeing Andrea, a woman, similar in age to me, there's like a year between us, seeing her in this position of power, who was so highly respected and so smart and talented. I was like, oh, okay, like she's made this into a career, and she was traveling a lot as well. Like winning competitions and going to make drinks at the Penn Dennis Club or going to New York on like a Martini tour. And it's like, oh, this is a thing. Like she's shaped this career for herself. Maybe I can do something similar. So it was an inspirational time, I think.
And I know you saw your position grow in that time to then winning a Spirited Award.
Yeah.
For one of your menus, and of course being shortlisted many times for other times. But how did you get even into the cocktail menu creation?
So when I started at Callooh Callay, I was just doing reservations and bookings, and they didn't really have social media. And this was 9 years ago. So I started doing Twitter. I was like, hey, you guys don't really do social media. Do you mind if I start doing some stuff? And Richard, the owner, was like, yeah, it's fine, no worries. So I started doing Twitter and then Facebook, and then later started doing Instagram. We did YouTube video content. And then that was going well, because there weren't really many bars at the time doing social media.
I know it sounds so crazy today.
I know, but it was really,
I mean, it's really early on.
Yeah. And because we were one of the first people doing it, like people were so interactive with us. So it was almost like a full-time job, just talking to people on Twitter and Facebook. And then because that was quite successful, I took on the website, just updating the website, and taught myself some design stuff from that. When I was at school, art and design and English were my favorite topics, and I'd done some work with graphic design just on Photoshop before. And so I asked, so eventually then I started doing the PR, because I was building relationships with writers and press, because they would come to the events at Callooh Callay. And at the time we had a PR company, but we kind of realized we didn't need one. So I took over doing the PR. So we bought that in-house, which obviously helped save the business money. And this happened over the course of a couple of years. So it wasn't like an instant thing. But then with the cocktail menus, I knew that they cost a lot of money to produce. So I was like, will you let me have a go at designing it? So they did. And they liked it. So we printed it. And then that's just how it continued to happen.
So which one did you win the award for?
So I think in that year, because we released 2 a year, in that year we'd released the cassette tape menu, and I think the Pantone color book, but definitely the cassette tape one.
I know the first time I went to Callooh, that was the menu I had, was
Really?
the cassette one. And I still remember it to this day because I'm a big menu fan as well.
That's
I'm a big
cool.
menu collector, and I wish I had one of those. But
Yeah.
I remember saying to my boyfriend, oh my God, I love this so much. So it's really one of the menus that I remember from ages ago.
That's really good to
drinking
know.
there. I know. I was like, I hope she says the cassette one.
Yeah, it was a great menu. And I think
it was fabulous.
Yeah, and it was like fun, and it was interactive. And it was great to have success with that menu. And that was like one of the first times that me and Andrea had collaborated on something. Like, she did the drinks, I did the design. We worked together on the wording, because obviously how you word a menu is equally, if not more important, as how it's designed. So we worked together on creating it, and it was great to get the recognition. I mean, it was kind of insane to get that recognition, because we weren't designers, didn't have any qualifications or any professional experience. But I really like, I guess, the lesson that comes from that, which is that ideas are worth so much more than money. Like, you can have someone who has great ideas and you don't have the financial backing, but if you can make it happen, then you can be 10 times more successful than a designer who has 10 years of experience and limitless budget to create things. So yeah, that was insane, actually, because we didn't expect to win at all. But and someone told us that we hadn't won. So I won't say.
Did they do that on purpose?
She did it on purpose.
Yeah.
So we had just planned on getting drunk, because we're like, oh well, we haven't. She told us we didn't win, so let's just drink this bottle of champagne. And then we're like, oh, what the hell?
No way. And then you staggered up to get your award.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But it was a nice way to do it, because it took away any of the fear or anticipation.
And made it that much more exciting, obviously, to win it.
Yes, because it was completely unexpected.
Mm-hmm. Now, really, that's like the top, winning an award, that and that accolade. Once you've done something, it's hard to go on to something else. So what attracted you to your next thing?
So I stayed at Callooh Callay for quite long. In all, I was there for 5 years, and I started as a reservationist, and then by the end was the events marketing and PR manager. But I always say Callooh Callay was like a bad ex-boyfriend that you always went back to. Like, I think I left like 3 times, and would always end up going back there somehow. And it's like, why don't I need to move on from this? So I went freelance for a while. And yeah, was doing freelance marketing work for people. That was like after 3 or 4 years of being at Callooh Callay, and then started working for Cask Liquid Marketing. Mm-hmm. We looked after people like Ocho Tequila and San Germain and Mount Gay and Hobo Beer and a few other products. So I was working with them. And then it's actually hard to remember because it feels like so long ago.
Was it different working for a product than working for a bar?
It was really different, and that was an intention. I wanted to learn about that side of the business, so it was like an intentional move. To learn about the drinks industry and how to market a brand and selling alcohol, basically. But yeah, it was really interesting to work across a variety of brands, because really at that point I'd only been working with Callooh Callay. So yeah, it wasn't for me, for sure, but I'm pleased that I did it and that I learned about it.
So then one of the most famous bars in the world called your name, and you moved to New York City.
Yeah, so this kind of this is, let's think. So I met Sean Muldoon and Jack McGarry in Paris when I went. Me and Andrea went there for the Paris Bar Show, and it was a weird story, because they were really interested in cocktail menus as well. So I saw them in Glass in Paris, which has since sadly closed. And I was like, I'm going to do it. So I went over to them. I was like, are you Sean Muldoon, Jack McGarry? And Jack was like, yeah, you're Rebekkah Dooley. And I was like, oh, what the hell? And he's like, we really like your cocktail menus. And I was like, right, okay, cool. So I spoke to them, and then got Jack's. I don't think they have business cards, actually. I think he gave me his email address, and I sent them my CV the next day. And that was probably like 2013 even. And we stayed in touch. I stayed in touch with both of them, and they came to London a couple of times every year to check out bars. And whenever they were here, I would meet up with them. And then 2015, I started doing something called the London Sessions, which is like a series of talks with leaders in the bar industry that was not too dissimilar to this, like talking about their journey, their lives. I was really interested in the idea of success and what it means to people. And Sean was our first guest. So he came over to London to do that. And I kind of intentionally would always try and work with him on things. So we got them over to London to do an event at Callooh Callay for London Cocktail Week. Like whenever I had an opportunity, I would work with them. It was for a long time, I wanted to work at Dead Rabbit. From the first day that I read about it, which was before it opened, it was reviewed by Difford's Guide and got a 5-star review, which was controversial because it hadn't opened.
Right.
A lot of people thought that was a bit unfair, which I can kind of understand. But yeah, since I first read it, I'm half Irish, so that was a big thing for me as well. Seeing what they'd managed to achieve. Even
the Dooley kinds of gives it away.
Yeah, Irish. I think as well what they'd achieved at the Merchant. So the Merchant is still the only bar to have won World's Best Bar that's not in London or New York. It's in Belfast, obviously. And I think that people forget, like so many people think about Dead Rabbit, but they forget that the Merchant, where Sean and Jack worked beforehand, won World's Best Bar, won World's Best Cocktail Menu, won World's Best Bar Team. And that's unheard of. Like a bar in Belfast, like bars in Edinburgh don't even do that, or bars in Manchester. And I really like to use it as an example, because people talk about, you can't win awards if you don't pay for marketing, or you don't have a budget for designers or PR. Well, they didn't have that money at the Merchant, and Belfast is barely a capital city. So I think what they achieved there, I found so interesting, because no one had done that, and no one since has done that. In my opinion. And there's obviously a lot of arguments about awards and what you have to do to win them, and I really think that the Merchant defied all of those the arguments that people even have now. I think when you're like, but what about these guys that did it in Belfast, it kind of debunks any argument that it's to do with money. So yes, they were on my radar for a long time. And I kind of engineered, I guess that was one of the first things that I actively was like, I want to do this. Like, this is the next thing for me in my career, and worked for a long time to make it happen. But I think I still was quite shocked when it actually did happen. I was in New York. I was working with the London Edition Hotel, and we were in New York doing some events at the New York Edition. I was the director of communications for the Edition at that point. So things had kind of gone quite, like, from reservationist to director of communications for a global hotel group I think I was pretty underqualified for that job and didn't do very well at it. But anyway, I was in New York with them, and I'd organised to meet Sean for a drink. We went to McSorley's, which I love.
One of my favorites, yes. I used
So
to live in
great.
New York, yeah.
I was going to ask you where you're from, actually.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, me and Jack have decided that we want to have you over here. He's like, well, they organized my visa and an immigration lawyer and everything.
Were you just like, oh my, yay, finally?
Yeah. I was like, what the hell?
Bye-bye, London Edition. Hello, Dead Rabbit.
Yeah, and it was kind of awkward because I was on a work trip with London Edition, so then I had to go from my thing with Sean to meet them at PDT. And I think I was late, so that they were mad at me, and I couldn't tell them. It was so annoying. Instantly you want to be like, I got my dream job, but you can't because that's your boss.
No, you can always blame it on the subway in New York. You know, oh, I was late because of the subway. It was traffic.
So yeah, it was great. I was so so happy, so delighted.
And what was that like working in New York for what was considered and is still considered one of the best bars in the world?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I love New York as a city. I think it's so beautiful. I know that it's not perfect by any means. I know there's a lot of like wealth disparity and bad things that happen there. But to me, it just speaks of like enterprise. Like the whole city just feels electric.
It does.
Even when you don't buy into the American dream, or like that, I think that for me, when I'm there, I can't help but feel like, wow, feels magic to me. And I think as well with the water, you're surrounded by water. You can,
especially down there where where
exactly.
Dead Rabbit is.
Yes, you have the Statue of Liberty right there. You have the financial district. You can see Brooklyn. I think you can see New Jersey, the other side. There's always an amazing skyline. Like even looking at New Jersey, it's beautiful. All the bridges. Like I lived in Brooklyn, across the bridge to get to work every day, and that is always gorgeous. So just the way that New York is physically, I love it. The noises of it, like when it's cold, it's freezing cold. When it's hot, it's so sweaty and humid. And like every part of New York, I feel like is extreme. It doesn't do anything in small measures. Like,
never.
Just by its nature, which can be good, and it can be bad as well. So just being there, I loved. And Dead Rabbit also is pretty extreme. So you can't do anything half-heartedly. They expect you to give your all. There's no hangover days, no tired days. Like there's no reason or excuse you can possibly give them for not doing your best every day. So it was very demanding, uncompromising, and it was 3 years that I was there, and it was great. I learned so much. I still speak to Sean every week, sometimes more, and I made a lot of great friends there. It was a great experience just to see how they do things.
And was it work-wise, the things that you were doing? Was it everything you expected? Were you did new things pop up that you thought, I want to explore that later? Were you? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So they at Dead Rabbit worked with everything was the best of the best. So they had a design company. So I wasn't really doing any design work. See, this is where they had a copywriter. So he did all the writing. So I wasn't really doing any writing. I kind of think I worked primarily under Sean. He's the person that I reported to. Jack is kind of the drinks and the HR side of things, and Sean is like the creative media side of things. I worked in a lot of events and great events, so events in Mexico and events in London, events in New Orleans. So there's quite a lot of travel in it. I think.
Did you miss the writing and the being creative?
I did miss the writing, yeah, but I kind of I did some writing for Difford's Guide, and I was able, I guess, to hone my skills in other areas. But I always will feel the need to write something and then find an outlet, find someone to print it for me or do something with it. So yeah, I think that's I definitely missed the writing. Yeah. So I think I'm more I learned a lot. And also just dealing with such a higher caliber of, I don't want to say people, but professionals, and also budgets. Like we did a lot of work with Bushmills, and just sometimes you're looking at money where you're like, what the hell? Like, I don't know, $500,000 or something that they're putting on an activation. And what we're doing, it would be like an integral part of it. We worked a lot more with brands. I think I learned a lot while I was there, but I don't know if I did it. I definitely worked very hard and did a lot every day, but I think it was more like smaller tasks than I was used to dealing with. Like I don't know if I maybe took a back seat to kind of see how other people do things, and I did a lot of logistical things, like with the books, especially the Irish pub tour book, organizing all the interviews and the itinerary for the tour, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we visited 100 pubs, and it was an 8-week trip.
Oh, so boy.
There was a lot of, it was 2 4-week trips actually. We broke it up into 2, but so I think it was a different, I don't know if it's different to what I expected, but it was definitely different to what I'd done before.
Mm-hmm. So what brought you back to London after that time there?
Yeah, so I had a 3-year visa, and I could have extended it for another 2 years and then applied for a green card. But I just I'd gone as far within Deb Rabbit as I was ever going to go. I think there wasn't, because they use professional writers and they use professional designers. Like, I was never, I felt like I'd progressed as much as I could. And I miss London. My brother had just had a baby, my first nephew. So I wanted to, and my boyfriend also lives in London. So I wanted to come home. Yeah.
And did you come home having any plans to work?
No, not really. No. And I spoke to Jack about it beforehand, and because I knew that I wanted to come back to London, but I didn't want to do it without their blessing. So that was like a really important part of it to me, was like having their support, and they both understood why I made that decision and were like fully behind me doing it. So I was really pleased with the way that worked out. It's a shame they were meant to be in London in March, end of March, beginning of April, but obviously their trip was cancelled because of coronavirus. But yeah, when I came back, I did not have any plans to work. I don't know which is so stupid. I don't know what I was thinking.
But they say that sometimes we need, especially like now, what's happening now, it's okay to not fill your life with lots of things right away. You can have that time to breathe and go, okay, what next? Without any stress. And lucky you got that. You were able to have that.
I was able to have that, and I didn't have a bunch of savings, but I had enough money to cover a couple of months' rent. So I didn't need to worry about anything immediately. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, because for so long my focus had been on working at Deb Rabbit, and it's a weird thing to do that, to like achieve what you're focused on, because then you're like, well, what next? Like,
and so young.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that, but it was strange. And like, still for me, there is no places get awarded world's best boy, and Deb Rabbit, I think it's 2015 2016 that it won, and I know it hasn't won that award in a few years, but to me it will always be up there. I don't think that it passes depending on the year, or depending on the year that this bunch, like for me it's still up there, and there's nowhere else that I would have wanted to work. So I really struggled with that for a while. But then I have a friend, Andy Kerr, who owns the Sun Tavern and Discount Suit Company and Umbrella Brewing, and we'd done some work with him actually with Deb Rabbit. Deb Rabbit had done a couple of London Cocktail Week events there, so I approached him, and now I work with them and their events, marketing, PR, branding, a bit of design. Yeah.
So you're back to doing some of your design.
Yes, back doing some of the design. We do work with a designer, Rory, so he does the majority of it. but I really like the team at the Sun Tavern and Umbrella is.
Yeah.
I guess one thing I didn't like about New York was how competitive it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like often, people don't necessarily support you because they want to be better than you. Or, maybe that's like a real sweeping statement, but it's definitely everyone wants to be top dog. And do you agree?
I lived there for a long time. Of course, I loved it. I was there for a long, long time. But there's sometimes can be that trade. I call it the trade up mentality, where everyone wants to trade up. So the next thing you do has to be always better, or you like dating. The next guy you date, the next woman you date, always has to be a little bit better than the one that you've left behind.
Yeah, it's 100%, and it's I feel like it's so ingrained in the culture there, and it's so ingrained in people's thinking that you can't get away from it. And I am a competitive person, but not on that level. Like I don't want to compete with my teammates, so it just doesn't make sense to me. So I really love at Umbrella that the team, like there's another designer, Rory, and he's fantastic. And we work on stuff together sometimes, and sometimes we don't. And there's another writer, John, who's also fantastic. And I don't resent having to work with him. I enjoy it. So it's my favorite thing about Umbrella is definitely the team, the people that I work with.
Now, one thing I'm holding, I have a copy on my iPad right here.
Okay.
Your magazine.
Yeah.
So you have a magazine, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
And I assume you had a lot to do with the design and obviously the words, because you've written a lot in there. So how did Discard the Zine come into being?
Okay, so I guess Gareth Evans, who is the global ambassador for Elix, is a good friend of mine, and we we're close friends, but we have a friendship that's built off oftentimes talking about things that we don't like. We're very quick to be like, this is crap, we would have done it differently, which is such a mean thing to say. But I think I love writing, I love designing, and we'd done the London sessions together, and we both needed a creative outlet where we could practice the things that we love doing. For me, that's design and writing. For Gareth as well, he's also a great writer. He has a War and Tour Instagram and Facebook page. But we wanted,
which is like one of my favorites of all time.
It's so funny,
yeah.
And we wanted to create a platform. When we did the London sessions, for me, that was about exploring the idea of success. And recently, I think I've been very interested in failure. And I think people don't talk about it. And one of our good friends, Liam, he had a bar and restaurant that he closed. And my boyfriend had just closed one of his bars as well. And he didn't talk about it because it wasn't like a done thing. It was like, you close it and you pretend that it didn't happen. But I think I like the idea of talking about it and having a platform to talk about things that people don't normally talk about, like failure. And we have Rosie from Free Sheets writing about gay bars, and just exploring different topics that I think aren't always given the airtime that they deserve. I think it's insane that we have so many great industry publications, and never once have I read an article about a gay bar. That just doesn't make the gay bars are part of the bar industry. Why do we pretend that they don't exist? And why do we pretend that people don't close bars? Bars close all the time, but we talk about everyone's successes and how fantastic they're doing, but we don't talk about the bad things as well. So it's really, we both enjoy doing Discard, and we fund it ourselves, so it's not a cheap hobby.
It's really beautifully done. It's so beautiful. On the iPad, it looks fantastic. I mean, I think, almost equal to, if not, the New Yorker, which does such an amazing job with something that you read online.
Yeah.
There's a difference between just reading something online and having something that looks good, because I've been reading a lot of books online lately, and it's such a pleasure when it's something that's written to be seen online.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. That's really good feedback. But I'll make sure we send you a print copy of the issue so you can hold one as well. But that should be out where it should be.
And also, it reminded me a lot of Lucky Peach, which is one of my favorites.
Well, that's where we got a lot of inspiration from. Yeah, it's Lucky Peach and Noble Rot. Were kind of
yeah. And I was touched by Edmund's of Oriole and HR Fame's article about what failure and competition and what that's like in this industry. Because I'm even 4 years of doing this, I still, am and pretty much of an outsider.
Okay.
Of dipping my toe in and not quite being part of that family, but reading it and trying to be. And, I was really touched by that article in it. It was so interesting. It was great.
It was so interesting. I'm really pleased you said that. And I hope Edmund hears this. But one thing we've been really fortunate, thankful for is that people have kind of taken a risk, like, especially with the first issue, we didn't have anything to show them, but we want people to write not necessarily controversial things, but we want them to be honest and sincere, and hopefully to talk about things that they haven't spoken about before. So that and Edmund opened up completely, and so did Liam, talking about closing bad sports. So we've been really lucky that people have allowed themselves to be vulnerable. I think especially Liam's piece is quite vulnerable. Yeah, so it's kind of like curating an art gallery. Like, if you don't have the other people's pieces of art in it, then it's crap. So we've been really fortunate that the people we've approached have really filled the brief and opened up and kind of explored different ideas. Yeah. So
are you working on the second issue?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're lucky because it's kind of easier now that we have the design template and everything set up. But it's a bit harder to do it in isolation,
of course,
on lockdown. I think everyone's mental health is kind of all over the place at the moment. So for some people, it's hard to be motivated. For other people, it's just hard to focus. So it's been a challenge, but it will be printed. It will exist, hopefully, in a month's time.
Well, I can't wait to read it.
Thanks.
And I thank you so much for taking the time and being here and talking about your progression. It's been really exciting.
It's been really enjoyable. Thank you so much for asking me loads of questions. We should go for a drink so I can reciprocate and get to know you too.
I would love that. Maybe maybe we'll find out on Sunday if we're allowed out again.
Yeah, I hope so.
And at one of those wonderful bars. The Discount Zoo Company was one of the bars that I went to right before we.
Oh, really?
We had to stay in. Yes, it's one of my favorites. So
me too. I miss it.
So we're gonna have a drink there. I know it. All right, sooner than later. All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
After we'd finished, I asked, as a home bartender herself, what her advice would be to the rest of us. Plus, of course, where she would drink if she could be anywhere in the world.
I do have a home bar, but that is because my flatmate works for Bacardi and my boyfriend owns Free Sheets. So we have a lot of bar products at home. Very few of them are mine. We drink quite a lot of wine at home, but the only drink that I make myself is a vodka soda. Anything more complicated, I have to get someone else to make it for me. My tips would be always have ice. Always have ice. Always have fresh lime, fresh citrus, and always have soda. And live with bartenders.
I love that. Yes. Order in,
which we can now do because there are so many great bars selling fantastic drinks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I can't help anyone make drinks. I'm sorry. I got no idea.
It's all right. That's great. I love those. That's good advice. Now, obviously you work for bars, and you've already said you love Dad Rabbit, but if there is one place that you could have a drink right now, where would that be? I know it's a tough one.
Such a hard question. But I think Three Sheets. I I'm going to choose Three Sheets as my number one, but my number two would be somewhere like the American Bar at the Savoy. So like Three Sheets, local neighborhood, great small team, or the American Bar for like some luxury and being treated and spoiled. But yeah, I miss them both dearly. I mean, I would go to any bar right now, to be honest with you. I'll go to TGI Fridays. I don't really.
I know it's a hard question to ask right now or to answer right now,
No,
really,
it's
we're desperate to go to any bar.
It's a great question. And I think that the way that everything is at the moment, it's making people more aware of how much they love and value and miss their bars and how important they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was great having Rebekkah on the show. I had seen her speak at the Drinks Conference Imbibe Live about 4 years ago, right when Lush Life was launched, and it was amazing to hear everything she's done since that time. Last week we celebrated World Gin Day and World Bourbon Day. But now it's time to toast to World Martini Day, which is upcoming on June 19th with Rebekkah's favorite and our cocktail of the week. So this is Rebekkah's Espresso Martini, our cocktail of the week, which has the added benefit of a little salted coffee liqueur. To make this salted coffee liqueur, you'll need to mix 300 grams of coffee liqueur, 340 grams of 2-to-1 sugar syrup, and 3 grams of Maldon sea salt together. A trick is to combine the liqueur and salt separately before adding the sugar syrup, as the salt won't fully dissolve otherwise. Now to make the espresso martini. Add all of the following ingredients to a shaker: 20 ml of your salted coffee liqueur, 40 ml of Grey Goose vodka, and 25 ml of espresso. Add ice and then shake, shake, shake. Then strain all of the ingredients into a coupe glass and top with 3 coffee beans. You'll find this recipe, more espresso martini recipes, more martini recipes, and loads of gin and bourbon recipes, plus all the cocktails of the week at alushlifemanual.com, as well as links to all the ingredients. I've been eating way too much on lockdown. So now I'm on a diet, which is way tougher than I thought it would be. So goodbye bread, crisps, and sweets. Oh, that doesn't mean I'm giving up booze, though. If you live for Lush Life, make sure you're giving back to the bars you love by donating or taking part in cocktail delivery where you live. Theme music for Lush Life is by Steven Shapiro and used with permission. And Lush Life is always and will be forever produced by Evo Terra and Simpler Media Productions. Which leads me to say the wise words of Oscar Wilde: all things in moderation, including moderation. And always drink responsibly and wash your hands and stay safe. Next week, we have the brand ambassador of Hendrick's Gin, a dream job that she actually dreamed about and got. Until that time, bottoms up.